Hello everyone, welcome to the January 18th, 2015 edition of the Astrology News Report. I'm your intrepid host, Ron Berger. So let's take a look at the upcoming planetary patterns and predictions, what's in store in the heavens for January 18th to January 25th and beyond. The main event this week is Mercury beginning its first retrograde period of 2015, which starts on Wednesday, January 21st. Mercury goes through a retrograde phase 3 different times for 3 weeks each time in a normal year. A retrograde planet appears to be going backwards in the zodiac, therefore it is not behaving normally. This means that we can't count on that planet to deliver its qualities the way it usually does. Therefore, retrograde planets are suspect, unreliable. When the planet of data, information, and rational thinking goes backwards in the zodiac, things tend to get screwed up in the communications department. Mercury begins this retrograde period while it is in Capricorn and nearly exactly opposite retrograde Jupiter on the other side of the zodiac. Jupiter opposite Mercury is usually a good influence, the planet of wisdom, exchanging energy with the planet of rational thinking. But with both planets backwards in the heavens, we can surmise that the mutual influence this time is more likely to screw things up rather than make anything better. And, looking at it a different way, it's the planet of facts and data, Mercury, and rational thinking, being opposed by the planet of beliefs and philosophies and ideology. The aspect of Jupiter on a planet usually instills confidence and increase for that planet's significations. When retrograde, Jupiter may replace confidence with doubt. The tendency towards doubt this time will be increased by the aspect of Saturn, which is hitting Mercury from its position in Scorpio. Saturn is sending its special third house aspect into Capricorn and influencing Mercury therein. This influence becomes even stronger later in the Mercury retrograde period. Thus, the problems of misunderstanding and misinterpretation typical of Mercury retrograde periods will be accompanied this time with anxiety, doubt, and suspicion. Okay, here's a brief description of Mercury retrograde effects for each rising sign. For Aries Rising, Mercury will be retrograde in your 10th house, the house of career, professional activities, authorities, and your boss. Therefore, if you are an Aries Rising person, you have to be especially careful in your professional life and any interaction with your superiors or with the government. If you are Taurus Rising, retrograde Mercury will affect your 9th house, the house of good fortune, travel, meritorious deeds, beliefs, morals, and ethics, father, and guru. There will be misunderstandings with your teacher and or with your father. Your good deeds will either go unnoticed or be misinterpreted by others. And this is not a good time for a long-distance journey. Gemini Rising people will have Mercury retrograde in their 8th house, the sector of the chart that has to do with chronic problems, clandestine activities, partners' wealth, contracts, and financial involvement with others. Since Mercury is the planet of business transactions, any activity of this sort would be best put off for now, or if it must be done, be really careful to understand the fine print. and any under-the-table actions are likely to backfire, possibly leading to humiliation. If you have a Cancer ascendant, Mercury will be retrograde in your 7th house, the house of partnership, of marriage, clients, direct enemies, and success in distant places. Since Mercury is the planet of communication and speech, Cancer rising people have to be especially careful of what they say so that it doesn't get misinterpreted by others, especially that person standing opposite to you. And this goes on for the next 3 weeks. Financial transactions involving business partners or clients need to be examined closely to make sure that there aren't any mistakes. For Leo rising people, Mercury is retrograde in your 6th house, the house of health and disease, solving problems, employment, employees, co-workers, and struggle in general. Communications on the job will suffer. Attempts to solve problems will run into delays and may even be unproductive. If there is a disease, there is the potential for misdiagnosis. On the other hand, if a problem has some connection to the past, or is a long-standing issue, this may be the time to tackle it. Virgo rising folks will have Mercury retrograde in their 5th house. This is the house of romance, creativity, children, guidance, spiritual practice, and investment. Mercury retrograde here will cause misunderstandings with your lover and or your children, or your attempts to advise others. Since Mercury is the planet of transactions, this would not be a good time to tinker with your investments. If you are Libra rising, Mercury will be retrograde in your 4th house, and therefore affect your domestic life, relations with mother, your sense of security and comfort. A retrograde Mercury in this part of your chart creates a greater likelihood of confusion in the home. Communications with your mother will be prone to misunderstandings, and this is not a good time for transactions regarding property or your car. For Scorpio rising people, Mercury is retrograde in your 3rd house of everyday activities, close relatives, neighbors, personal desires, efforts, and initiative. Mercury has a special affinity for this part of the chart, so when it is retrograde here, 3rd house activities are going to go awry. Mostly the results will be irritating, and efforts to remedy the situation may come to naught. Best to put off beginning any new project at this time. A better use of the energy would be to deal with past business, clean out the closet, and make amends with the neighbor or your sibling. Sagittarius charts have Mercury retrograde affecting their 2nd house, the house of family, personal finances, materiality, and speech. Since Mercury is the planet of speech, this is a particularly problematic placement, resulting in misunderstanding of what you have to say. Communications with family members must be done with special care. Mercury, as the planet of transactions, will not be helpful to your financial picture while it is retrograde in your 2nd house. This would not be a good time for making any new purchases. Capricorn people have Mercury retrograde in their 1st house, the house of self-awareness, ego, and the physical body. The best that can be said about this transit is that it may be helpful for some self-reflection, introspection, personal evaluation. But outward expressions of self, communications with others, business transactions, attempts at rational discussion, all these Mercury manifestations will be more problematic during the coming weeks. And if you are Aquarius Rising, Mercury will be retrograde in your 12th house. And this area of the chart is more about the inner landscape. And since retrograde planets express themselves better on an inner level, having Mercury retrograde here could help in psychological analysis, contemplation, meditation, or dream work. The tendency will be to be less communicative outwardly anyway, which may be just as well, since that way there will be less risk of being misunderstood. Finally, Pisces Rising people will have Mercury retrograde in their 11th house. You have to be especially careful of communications with friends and professional associates, or with your elder sibling, due to the likelihood of misinterpretation. Better to wait a while before embarking on any new ambitions, which will likely be delayed anyway. The profit picture will not be as good as hoped for. Your rewards for doing a good job will also have to wait. Okay, now for a couple of other things that are also happening this week. On Tuesday, January 20th, there will be a new moon at 6 degrees Capricorn. This marks the beginning of the Hindu lunar month of Magha, named for the nakshatra, the lunar sign, Magha, that the full moon falls in. Except, this year, the full moon will fall in Ashlesha, the prior lunar sign. So the quality of the energy of the month is more in line with the sign Ashlesha. Ashlesha is symbolized by the coiled snake. The snake, a cunning, calculative, suspicious creature with powerful, primordial instincts. That's the energy of the coming lunar month, folks. Note that the new moon will receive a close aspect from Saturn from its position in Scorpio. That means that Saturn, the planet of responsibility and restriction, also has influence over this coming lunar month. And on Thursday, January 22nd, Venus changes signs, leaving Capricorn and entering Aquarius. Venus will join up with Mars and Neptune in the sign of social groups and humanitarian action. This is not necessarily bad. The potential is for more energy, passion, and interest to do some good for society, an appeal for the general welfare, to help lift up the disadvantaged. Venus will be in Aquarius for 3.5 weeks, until February 15th. Okay, that's all the time we have for this week. Thanks for visiting astrologynewsreport.com. I'll be posting updates during the week, as usual, on Twitter, @AstroNewsReport.